Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
We are doing a deep dive today into, well, a set of documents that feel less like history and, frankly, more like a blueprint for what's happening right now.
It's pretty shocking when you first read it. The source material is the selected writings of Dr. Joshua Haldeman.
Right, and the core of his argument, the part we're focusing on, is from pages 6 to 90. He wrote it all in 1960.
And in it, he lays out this whole vision of what he calls an international conspiracy.
And crucially, his argument for why North America absolutely must unify to survive it.
And we should probably ground this for you right away. This isn't just some random historical figure.
No, not at all.
Dr. Haldeman is the grandfather of Elon Musk. And he was also the former director of a movement called Technocracy Incorporated.
That's the hook, isn't it? The thing that just grabs you is this map they champion, dating all the way back to the 1940s.
The proposed Technate of America.
And this map, it's not just some, interesting antique. It shows this unified megastate.
It's huge. It covers all of North America, goes right down through Central America, grabs all the Caribbean islands.
And critically, for what's happening now, it includes Greenland. It's a vision for a completely redrawn continent.
So the big question for this deep dive is why? Why is a map drawn up before World War II suddenly being used by some people as a kind of predictive text?
Exactly. The sources we're looking at suggest this old technocracy vision is being actively used to interpret very specific, very recent political actions.
This is where it gets a little wild.
It really is. I mean,
Right.
Think back to President Trump's first term. He floated the idea of buying Greenland.
And everyone laughed, right? It was treated as a joke.
A total joke. But for people who follow this material, that wasn't a joke at all. It was a tell. It lined up perfectly with that old Technate map.
It did. See, Haldeman's whole argument was that this massive technate was the only way for the U.S. to create a self-sustaining, totally impervious zone to fight off this international conspiracy.
So these actions aren't random. They're seen as deliberate steps.
Steps toward building that defense, yes.
Okay, so fast forward to January 2025, the start of his second term. The focus immediately becomes the Western Hemisphere.
An intense focus. We saw reports about taunting Canada, calling it the 51st state.
Right, and moves to secure the Panama Canal from what the administration called Chinese influence by 2027.
And then declaring Mexico a narco state, which, lays the groundwork for potential military intervention.
But here's the detail. The one that, for believers in this, ties it all directly to that old map.
This is the stunner.
On his very first day back in office, January 2025, President Trump reportedly signs an executive action renaming the Gulf of Mexico.
So the Gulf of America.
And that exact name, Gulf of America, is printed right there on the 1940s Technate map.
The specificity is just staggering. It moves it from a general idea to a very specific blueprint.
So what's the point of all this? According to Haldeman, what does swallowing up the entire continent actually accomplish?
It's about getting rid of vulnerabilities. It's about sealing off the borders, not just physically, but financially and politically.
So the Technate of America is the shield.
It's the shield. And it's fascinating how this old, really boundary-pushing vision is being used as the lens to view these modern actions. It suggests a deliberate move towards this unified American sphere.
A bulwark against the forces he despised.
Exactly.
Okay, so if the Technate is the defense, let's talk about the enemy. Let's pivot to what this whole system is supposed to be fighting.
This brings us to the core of his 1960 writings. Haldeman's definition of the international conspiracy.
And he's not vague about their goal, is he?
Not at all. He defines it with total clarity. A world totalitarian dictatorship or Soviet. And to get there, he says it needs two things.
A world bank?
And a world police force. For him, it was a war against the very idea of a sovereign nation.
Which he saw as the only thing protecting what he called white Christian civilization.
And he's very specific about who he thinks is pulling the strings.
He names names. The directing force, he says, is international finance.
He points to the Rothschilds, operating through institutions like the Royal Institute of International Affairs in London.
And the Rockefellers, using groups like the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR, here in the U.S.
And their ultimate weapon, according to Haldeman's writing, it isn't an army. It's the financial system itself.
He calls it a debt-creating system.
He does. And he quotes banking authorities from the time, people like Lord Keynes and a central bank governor named Towers, who basically admit that banks create money out of nothing.
This is the core of it, right? The technical part, fractional reserve banking. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. Basically, Haldeman explains it like this. A bank takes your dollar deposit but it's legally allowed to loan out, say, $9 or $10 based on that $1.
Because they assume we're not all going to ask for our money back at the same time.
Exactly. But the key is that loan is new money. It's a debt token that was just created. Your original dollar's still there, but now there are 9 new dollars of debt in the world.
So the result is that there's always more debt in the system than there is actual money to pay it back.
Precisely. It's a mathematical certainty.
So Haldeman's argument is that this system is designed on purpose to keep everyone, individuals, and entire countries trapped in debt forever.
Yes. It's the ultimate control mechanism. You don't need to invade a country if you own its debt.
And he claims this isn't just a theory. He says it's been used to engineer actual historical events.
He connects it directly to major conflicts. He attributes things like the Anglo-Boer War, both world wars, and especially the crash of 1929.
What does he say about the crash?
He claims it was deliberately engineered to clean up the savings of private individuals, basically to wipe out the middle class and consolidate wealth and power at the very top.
The goal is always the same.
Perpetual debt and chipping away at national sovereignty.
So if you've got nations trapped in financial debt, where does the conspiracy go next for more control?
Well, according to Haldeman, the easiest path wasn't through the treasury, is through the human body. He says the conspiracy found health to be the easiest and best means of infiltration into people's daily lives. Which brings us to what he calls the pharmaceutical nexus.
And he talks about the power and profits of what he calls the drug trusts. I mean, the numbers he cites they're wild.
He claims profits of up to 10,000%.
Yeah.
And he cites the Kifova report from the U.S. Senate in the 1960s as the source for that figure.
And how is that profit used for control?
He argues that the money gets funneled into these huge tax-free foundations. And those foundations then control policy.
How so?
They control the grants. So they control the curriculum at medical schools, the policies of medical associations, and the directives of public health departments all over the world.
The fundamental critique he has is about compulsion, isn't it? What he calls the anti-Christian idea that you can't contract out of a health decision.
Yes, and he focuses heavily on mass vaccines.
Okay, so what's his logic here? This is a really hot topic today.
His logic, writing in 1960, is based on a premise of total individual autonomy. He argues that if a vaccine gives you complete protection,
Complete safety.
right, then there is, in his words, no Christian reason to force it on other people.
Because if you're totally protected, someone who is unvaccinated can't possibly be a threat to you.
That's his exact logic. Therefore, he sees any kind of compulsion as purely totalitarian. It's not about health, in his view. It's about state control and destroying bodily autonomy.
And you can see how that 1960s argument provides this historical framework for how people are interpreting vaccine mandate controversies today, especially after 2020.
It frames the entire debate as individual sovereignty versus state compulsion.
And he doesn't just stop at vaccines. He talks about mass medication in other forms.
Right. He also brings up fluoride in the water. He calls it mass medication and a brainwashing program under the guise of health education.
So from financial control to bodily control to the final frontier, the mind itself.
Psychopolitics. Back in the 1960s, he saw this as the ultimate weapon.
And what was the goal?
He says the goal was to make an attack upon communism and insanity synonymous.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means that if you design the system correctly, anyone who tries to expose the conspiracy is immediately labeled as crazy, paranoid.
Ah, I see. So the system's ultimate defense is to pathologize its critics.
Exactly. It neutralizes all opposition by discrediting the person, not the argument. He even warns about using drugs or surgery for the liquidation of the mentally unfit, which he says will ultimately just mean the political opposition.
And this is where it gets really interesting because we have to keep reminding ourselves this was all written in 1960.
That context is everything. He was framing this as a defense of white Christian civilization against this rising tide of internationalism.
And he links it all back to Technocracy, Inc.
He does, and this is a key distinction. The technocracy movement itself promoted what it calls scientific socialism, a planned economy. But Haldeman saw that planned North American economy as the only way to fight the internationalist, globalist planned economy.
One planned economy to fight another.
A domestic fortress to fight a global prison. That was his view.
So let's connect those dots. Let's use his 1960 framework to look at what's happening now.
Or you can see how his fears about state medical services, mass vaccines, centralized planning, they're all being used today as a lens.
To interpret things like The post-2020 vaccine debates, the talk about buying Greenland, or the power of the IMF and World Bank.
The underlying theme that his readers see everywhere is that the 10 points of the Communist Manifesto are being slowly rolled out globally, but they're being sold as progress.
And this framework, it can be applied to major geopolitical events too, right? Like what just happened in Venezuela.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, the 1960 source doesn't mention the U.S. president's actions against Maduro in January 2026, but the strategic playbook is all there.
How so?
Haldeman emphasizes that the conspirators use war and the threat of war to force nations into line, to force them into large-scale planning.
The ultimate goal always being to break their national sovereignty.
Yes, especially in what he called trouble spots that resist. For him, in 1960, that was South Africa.
So if you apply that framework to the 2026 Venezuela situation, where the U.S. is challenging Maduro's control over the region's oil,
Then followers of Haldeman's thinking don't see an isolated incident. They see another move on the chessboard, a deliberate push to eliminate a resistant state inside that desired technate sphere of influence.
it's a structured, though, highly conspiratorial way to interpret this expansionist U.S. foreign policy we're seeing.
It connects every action back to this one single goal, defeating the international conspiracy by first building the technate.
So what does this all mean? We started with a map from the 40s, the Technate of America. We tracked its author, Dr. Joshua Haldeman, Elon Musk's grandfather, and we used his 1960 writings to build this entire framework for seeing the world.
A framework that involves international finance, compulsory health measures, mind control, and geopolitical expansion, all as pieces of the same puzzle.
It's a historical text claiming that hidden forces are manipulating the world through debt and health.
Right. But maybe we should leave you with one last provocative thought from Haldeman's own writings.
Okay.
He makes this unique economic observation. He claims that the highest standard of living South Africa ever had, in terms of real productive capacity and wealth, was during the ox cart days of the old Boer republics.
Before the modern debt-based financial system arrived.
Exactly.
So that raises a really important question for you to think about after this. In an age of unbelievable technological abundance where we can produce almost anything we want, why is scarcity in the form of financial debt and restricted consumption a mathematically guaranteed outcome of the system we live under?